Give me a home where the buffalo roam and the skies are not cloudy all day. Wyoming. Pass.
Well, I figured out why it's so windy in New Mexico. Because Colorado sucks. So rather than journal, I thought that I would vlog this morning. Yesterday my journal was covering how perfect it was, or at least how it was almost perfect. The national park just north of Amarillo. Yesterday I was planning on staying on what is known as Devil's Canyon Road, about a half an hour up into the mountains towards the Rocky Mountain National Park. When I got to Devil's Canyon Road, it was closed. So I went a little further up the road towards Roosevelt Forest. And Roosevelt Forest had a mile road through what was residential, but it said it had access to the national park. So I thought that I would go ahead and take that road and head up towards the national park and see if I could find a place to pull off and crash. Well, I got to the entrance to the national park, which was closed as well. So Colorado was a bust. I wasn't going to pay at it was the Jellystone RV park or whatever. So I went ahead and continued on a different road through Roosevelt Forest in hopes to find something else. And along the way I found several places that allowed parking. And I got excited at a few of them until I started reading the rules that said no overnight parking, day use only. So hiking, fishing, canoeing, whatever you'd like to do for the day is fine, but no overnight. So needless to say, I was a little bit disappointed with Colorado, at least the area that I chose. Now, I do, and I said this earlier, actually, when I was driving through the area, I don't have anybody else to be upset with but myself. Because even though I did my research on the location and the availability of places to boondock, what I didn't do is verify that they were open, which I didn't really see anything that indicated they were closed, and I'm not real sure, short of making phone calls, if I would have been able to find that out. And because it was about 45 minutes off the highway, that's about a 2.5 hour drive out of the way. So I got back on 25, headed north. I figured that I would go ahead and swing into Wyoming, Cheyenne perhaps, or Casper, and find a place there. There were 5 well, so far, I'm still driving in Wyoming. There were 5 rest stops. And of the 5, only one of them had a sign on the highway that said it was closed. The other 5 I just found out by driving up and seeing the gate closed. And I went into a convenience store, got 2 bottles of water, and asked the clerk what the reason was, and she said budget cuts. And I asked her if all of the rest stops on 25 north to Montana were closed, and she said yes. So, well, now that I can definitely be upset with the state of Wyoming Kind of like that saying, you know, Wyoming sucks, prove me wrong. That's pretty bad. There is millions of acres, and all I need is a dirt road like the one that I just saw right there, without a sign as big as my truck that says no trespassing. I can top one of these little hills, park, go to sleep like a baby, wake up and carry on. That's not available. So I ended up sleeping last night in I guess they call them it's parking area, which is just a pull-off. It's a watered-down version of a rest stop. Obviously, there's no trash cans, so obviously, boondocking, I'm going to carry in, carry out. But no trash cans, no restrooms, no, hand washing facilities, no nothing. Wash your face. You just pull in and pull out. The difference being, I'm on a highway. As on the highway as I can get. It's a little. It's basically, there's a shoulder, a lane where you can park, a lane to drive, and then another lane to park. So it's about 40, 50 feet off the highway at the farthest that you can get, which is where I slept. All the traffic that drove by, including some traffic that came through the parking area, several trucks came in, stopped, left. I got there at about 10-ish, left about 4:30, and there was a truck there when I left, and it could have been one of the ones that pulled in, or it could have been one that pulled in later. But there was one car that pulled in, because I put the shades up so that I can cover the windows except the one back there, the back passenger. And the reason for that is because it was facing the road, and it would also give me view if vehicles pulled into the parking area. Laying on my bed, I would be able to see if they continued to drive on past. Now, granted, obviously, there's a little bitty slit on the side where I have my front shade that I can see, but that's just a small area. I wanted to be able to see them drive by. And I'm kind of glad I did that, because there was one car that pulled up and stopped right next to me. And I very seriously doubt that they could see in the car, because all the other shades were up. So there was no light coming through. And I sat up and leaned over and looked out the window at the vehicle. And right about that time, it took off. And it drove all the way through the rest area and left. So maybe you're looking for abandoned vehicles? I don't know. Didn't feel unsafe at any point. Not at all. Just observant. And my experience, my years in the military, I can sleep fairly lightly if I need to. I don't necessarily want to, but if I need to, I can. So I didn't get the best sleep last night, but I got some sleep last night. I'd say probably about 5 hours, 4.5 hours of sleep last night, which, I was deployed in Bosnia for 11 months, and that's the average amount of sleep that I got for that entire time. Between that and a whole bunch of coffee, which I got a big cup of right now. But headed to Montana, going through some serious fog. I don't know if you can actually see it through the window. You can see it through the window, but you can definitely see it heading up. I'd say probably a 1/16 of a mile visibility, maybe. 1,000 feet. Heavy fog, and it's getting worse. It's getting thicker. Higher elevation I get. I've been keeping the cruise control set on this to keep me within the speed limit, and to be honest with you right now, I'm actually doing 10 miles below the speed limit. And I've been fairly consistent with that, primarily because, well, for one, man, from the time that I got to North Texas, up onto the Edwards Plateau and beyond into the Llano Estacado, and then through New Mexico, Colorado, and now heavy winds. And with this new rooftop carrier, it's like having a sail. If the wind is, and it has been primarily blowing from the northwest, so it's hitting me, and I'm, working to keep the vehicle on the road. It almost feels like I've got a low right front tire, the way that it kind of pulls over, but I know that it's the wind because I can see the shrubs, brush, or grass on the side of the road just waving. But I just wanted to vlog a little bit on the experience that I had yesterday, because it's so contrary to what I had whenever I went to the national park north of Amarillo. It's just a beautiful day, clear blue skies, drove in, no problem, signs, read the rules, went back to my campsite, had a bite to eat, took some pictures, took some video, and set up my bunk, crashed, woke up, headed out. Everything just seemed to flow. In fact, in my journal, the only thing that I said that was negative was the temperature didn't get below 80 until after 10 o'clock, which for me is a little warm. And I do have that little fan that solar powered, so I turned it on, and that helped. Just blew it straight into my head, and that helped. It's still warm, but as the temperature dropped, at one point I even kind of reached for the covers and pulled them up over my leg. Otherwise, I slept without any covers at all. Last night, I definitely slept with covers. It got down to 3 Celsius. And the reason I do 3 Celsius is because that's, to me, that's easier. I mean, I know that 32 degrees is freezing Fahrenheit. I know that 100 degrees boiling, yada yada, or 120 I think it is Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius. To me, it's just easier to remember 100 Celsius freezing, or boiling, 0 freezing, and if it's above 0 Celsius, then I can sleep comfortably. If it's in the single digits, I usually need my sleeping bag, but I didn't want to climb up on the rooftop because I was technically stealth camping. I just pulled up, put the shades up, climbed in, got my bed ready, crashed. Cleaned my feet, wiped my face, and got a new, whatever, grime off. And then just went to sleep. And I actually slept comfortable. I'm fine with the above freezing. In this Xterra at 30, or excuse me, I almost went back to Fahrenheit, at 3, 4, 5 degrees, we're pushing close to 40 degrees, so Celsius or Fahrenheit. So 3, 4, 5 is fine with me. If it gets below 0, then I start to get a little uncomfortable. But with that sleeping bag, I can sleep to minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty cold. And I have slept in those conditions before, not often, but I have done it. Snow. We pulled into Bosnia February 6th, and there was probably about 24 to 36 inches of snow. It was above my knees. And when we finally got to camp and started getting set up, I had been without heat from 3 a.m. that morning when we tore down the stoves and the tents and got everything all packed up and put into the vehicles, and packed up and convoyed and got to our campsite, our location, at around 9:30 that night. I had been without heat. The heat in the vehicle that I was passenger in, TC, had no heat. And then we had to set up the tents basically in that 24 to 36 inches of snow, and all we could do is just lay pieces of plywood down and walk on them until they kind of crunched down, and then took 2x4s, secured the plywood together, and then put the tents up on the plywood. And then throughout the night you could just feel the plywood sink as the snow melted from the heaters and us being inside the tent. And man, from February to April it was nothing but mud. But I digress. I'm not really talking about Bosnia here. Just giving an indication of how I can sleep comfortably in cold weather. And there's actually still snow on the ground. I don't know if that's going to show up, but on this hill, an area where apparently it doesn't get much snow, it's still 4 degrees and there's snow on the ground. And that's one of several places that I've seen snow. In Colorado as well, but the further I head north, the more snow there is. I'm hoping Snoqualmie passes good. I'm going to check that tomorrow, because once I get up to Montana, I'm going to hang out around Berrytown, where the Little Bighorn monument is. Little Bighorn, where Custer and his men were killed. And there's interest there for me. One, because I'm a historian, but two, because I was stationed at Fort Riley was my first duty assignment, and the hill where all of the barracks and the basically where the division was garrisoned was called Custer Hill. And I believe that Custer was either a lieutenant or a major when he was stationed at Fort Riley, because I don't believe that was where he was deployed from when he went to Montana, because at that point I know he was a lieutenant colonel. And I could be wrong. I should check that. I should know that. Or I did at one point, just don't remember it. But for some reason it sticks that I believe he was a junior officer when he was at Fort Riley, just commemorated, because of who he is and the fact that he was there. Much the same way that General George S. Patton's son was the commanding officer of the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, 1st Squadron, where I was assigned in Fulda, Germany. Of course, well before my time, just a decade before my time, but that's just an interesting fact to know. Yet I digress again. I think I'll go ahead and end the vlog here. Thanks for watching, and I wish you all the best, always.